The billionaire laughed loudly, holding a crystal glass, promising $100 million to anyone who danced better. Guests in tuxedos clapped nervously, unsure if this was entertainment or another cruel game of power tonight. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments what time is it and where are you watching from. Let's start. Across the shining marble floor stood the maid, quiet in her uniform, eyes steady despite the mocking smiles. He pointed at her suddenly, saying even she could try, and the hall erupted in soft, judgmental laughter. Her hands tightened slightly, not from fear, but from memories of nights she practiced alone after work. The chandelier lights reflected off polished floors, turning the ballroom into a stage of silent pressure. Whispers spread fast, some betting she would refuse, others waiting to film her public humiliation. The billionaire smirked, confident that wealth could never be challenged by someone so ordinary. But behind her calm face lived years of discipline, sacrifice, and a promise made to her late father. She stepped forward slowly, heels echoing, every sound cutting through the heavy air of arrogance. In that moment, the music had not even begun, yet something in the room had already shifted. The orchestra members exchanged glances, waiting for a signal, unsure if this was still a joke or destiny unfolding. The billionaire adjusted his cufflinks confidently, certain this would be remembered as his favorite party trick. She stood in the center now, simple uniform against glittering gowns, yet her posture carried quiet strength. A guest whispered that she should apologize before embarrassing herself in front of high society. Her heartbeat was steady, not rushed, as if she had rehearsed this exact humiliation many times before. The billionaire raised his hand dramatically, signaling the musicians to begin the music slowly. Soft classical notes filled the ballroom, elegant and controlled, designed to expose her inexperience. She closed her eyes briefly, not in fear, but to remember the small living room where she first learned rhythm. Every late shift, every insult, every unpaid overtime hour had built something stronger than pride. The guests leaned forward, phones ready, hungry for a viral moment of failure and laughter. The billionaire stepped onto the floor first, spinning smoothly, proving he had trained for applause. But when her first step touched the marble, the room felt a sudden silence no one expected. Her first movement was slow and deliberate, almost modest, as if she was measuring the weight of every watching eye in the hall. The billionaire's grin widened, convinced that hesitation was proof she did not belong on this polished marble stage. But her next turn unfolded with sharp precision, heels striking rhythm in perfect harmony with the rising orchestra. The chandeliers shimmered above, reflecting not luxury alone, but the tension slowly tightening around his confidence. Guests who had prepared to laugh now leaned forward, their expressions shifting from mockery to disbelief. The billionaire increased his speed, adding complex spins and dramatic pauses meant to steal back control. She answered with effortless footwork, every step grounded in discipline carved from years of silent struggle. The tempo climbed higher, violins racing, testing balance, stamina, and the courage to stand unshaken. Her breathing stayed steady, shoulders relaxed, eyes focused not on him, but on something deeper within. A businessman in the front row slowly lowered his glass, realizing this was no servant chasing attention. The billionaire's applause cues began to fail as the crowd's clapping started syncing with her rhythm instead. And in that shifting wave of sound, his certainty cracked for the very first time in his powerful life. The music grew louder, faster, filling the ballroom with a pressure that no money could silence anymore. Sweat formed lightly on the billionaire's forehead, though he forced a smile to hide his rising fear. She moved with fearless precision, every spin clean, every pause controlled, every expression calm and steady. The crowd's applause began to favor her rhythm, clapping naturally with her steps instead of his. He attempted a risky lift and sharp turn, trying to impress with drama instead of discipline. For a brief second, his balance slipped, just enough for doubt to flash across his face. She noticed, but did not smirk or celebrate, choosing focus over revenge in that critical moment. Her next sequence flowed powerfully, feet gliding across marble like she owned the stage tonight. Guests who once whispered insults now exchanged stunned looks, realizing they had misjudged her completely. The billionaire's confidence thinned, his movements growing slightly rushed, slightly desperate for dominance. A silence formed between musical beats, heavy and electric, as the final section approached. And everyone understood that this was no longer entertainment, but a turning point none could undo. The final section of music exploded through the ballroom, sharp and demanding, leaving no space for hesitation or pride. The billionaire straightened his posture, forcing confidence into his smile as influential guests watched closely. She shifted her weight calmly, grounding herself with a quiet breath that carried years of hidden sacrifice. He attacked the rhythm with aggressive spins and bold footwork, chasing applause instead of control. She responded with flawless precision, each movement disciplined, measured, and impossible to dismiss. The tempo climbed higher, violins racing wildly, pushing both dancers toward their physical and emotional limits. A thin line of sweat traced down his temple, revealing pressure he could no longer fully conceal. Her eyes remained steady and focused, not on the crowd, but on the promise she made long ago. The guests stopped whispering entirely, realizing this contest had transformed into something deeply personal. He attempted a daring combination, blending speed and flair, determined to reclaim dominance publicly. For a split second, his footing faltered, and panic flickered across his carefully maintained expression. In that fragile moment, the balance of power shifted visibly, and everyone in the hall felt it. A thick silence swallowed the ballroom, heavier than pride, as the last sharp notes faded into the ceiling. The billionaire straightened his jacket quickly, masking humiliation behind a smile that no longer convinced anyone. She completed her final turn with controlled grace, refusing to mock him despite the clear shift in power. Every eye in the hall studied them both, measuring not talent now, but integrity under pressure. The orchestra members slowly lowered their instruments, sensing that history had quietly changed direction. Guests who once laughed nervously now avoided his gaze, embarrassed by their earlier arrogance. He began clapping first, a forced gesture meant to reclaim authority he could feel slipping away. But the applause that followed was genuine and loud, rising for her without instruction or fear. His throat tightened as he understood this respect could not be purchased or commanded. She stood still in the center, breathing steady, waiting not for reward, but for acknowledgement. A senior investor whispered that character reveals itself fastest when power begins to tremble. And in that fragile, unforgettable moment, the billionaire realized he had just been truly defeated. The applause continued longer than expected, echoing through the hall like a verdict no one could reverse. The billionaire lowered his hand slowly, realizing the crowd was no longer watching him for approval. Cameras remained fixed on her, capturing strength that came without arrogance or demand. He stepped toward the center, each movement heavier than the confident strides he took earlier. She remained calm, neither smiling in victory nor showing anger from past humiliation. The $100 million promise now hung in the air like a test of his true character. Guests whispered about contracts, reputation, and headlines that would follow tomorrow morning. For the first time, he felt the weight of his own words pressing against his pride. He cleared his throat, attempting to speak, but emotion tightened his voice unexpectedly. She looked at him directly, not challenging him, only waiting for fairness. Years of unchecked power stood on one side, and simple dignity stood on the other. And everyone in that ballroom knew his next sentence would define him forever. He took a slow breath and walked to the center, pride battling the truth inside his trembling chest. The microphone felt heavier than ever before as hundreds of eyes waited for his final decision. He looked at her, no longer as a maid, but as a woman who earned respect through discipline. His voice cracked slightly as he admitted that tonight she had outperformed him fairly. Gasps filled the hall, not because she won, but because he chose honesty over ego. He announced the $100 million would be honored exactly as promised. But before the applause settled, he added something no one expected from him. He apologized publicly for mocking her and for confusing wealth with true worth. Tears formed in a few silent eyes as the power dynamic shifted with genuine humility. She accepted the victory with grace, saying respect mattered more than any amount of money. That night changed not only headlines, but the heart of a man who finally understood dignity. The story ends here, but the mystery lives on. Like, subscribe, and return for the next unforgettable journey.